come here and we're going to conquer and we're going to take some. Is that understood? Yes, sir. That's what we're going to do, sweetheart. We are going to go and get some. All right, people, on the ready line. Are you me? Yeah! Are you me? Yeah! What are you? What are you?
The support systems of family and community are an integral part of the holidays for those that are caring for loved ones with special needs. Through the love and diligence of his family, Jeremiah Feliciano was able to live a healthy and productive life despite his rare genetic disease. Read his story and much more in EP's annual Family and Community issue. To read more, sign up for free today at www.epmagazine.com.
Monotony. It comes in all shapes and sizes. Dull, tedious, just plain boring. But what is this? A contender, perhaps? Something unboring by the looks of it. Jabs right at dull, an uppercut to tedium, something that keeps you on your toes, keeps your head on a swivel, a knockout punch to your old, boring workouts. Welcome to Fight Camp.
Oscar Mike Radio is a proud podcast partner of Reach Across America Radio, heard every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. They're also big supporters of the nonprofit I Got Your Six, 2 Lives at Once. And with every wreath you sponsor through Oscar Mike Radio, $5 goes back to this great organization dedicated to making a difference in the lives of veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders battling PTSD. 2 Lives at Once pairs these brave men and women together with dogs rescued from kill shelters. In this way, 2 lives are saved at the same time by saving each other. Donate now. Go to reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio to help. That's reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio.
I remember a time when I was in a not so good place, and these games and these activities and being able to come and have the camaraderie that we have here, it makes me feel like I'm not alone. There are people here that have been through what I've been through. It makes me feel like I don't know, I'm part of something great.
Just let yourself go. Give it a try.
Hello and welcome to the special release of Oscar Mike Radio on Sunday night. Oscar Mike Radio is co-produced by System One Productions. What's your podcast doing? I want to thank my sponsors, Joyce Asek of Asek Real Estate, my supporters, Cason Shaving Company, Exceptional Parent Magazine, and Fight Camp. And Fight Camp is why we're having a special release. It's been a really full throttle, missile off the rail 2 weeks. I have a Fight Camp kit, and I'm with the co-founder of Fight Camp, Tommy Duquette. Welcome to Oscar Mike Radio. Thank you so much.
Let's go, Travis. Let me see those knuckles right now. Are those starting to get beat up? There we go. Look at those. Look at those mallets.
They're mallets, ham hocks, whatever you want to call them, paws, claws, hammers. And my first question before we get into the good stuff, and it's all good, is I'm a weightlifter, Tommy, and I can move 200, 300 pounds with ease. Why do boxing gloves get so heavy? Because it's like I'm doing the punching, I'm getting the bag, and I'm like, man, these are getting. And PJ's like, yeah, we're
Yeah,
talking about Philly's cheesesteaks and ketchup, and they get heavy, Tommy, quick.
they get very heavy. Yeah, they do. That's just that different kind of endurance, right?
Okay,
That you build up. Yeah, you build that up over time, over, PG, Coach PJ over years, right?
for
Over a
sure.
decade. So yeah, it's just building up that stamina, endurance, and that muscle memory.
So this is a really exciting time to get to talk with you. It's an exciting time for me in several different areas. We'll talk about that. An exciting time for Oscar Mike Radio, and then understand what the fight camp community is all about. It's just good, good, and more good. But let's start off with a little bit for my listeners and watchers. Who is Tommy Duquette? And surprise, surprise, you kind of grew up in the Boston, Massachusetts, greater Boston area.
Mhm.
So you're like in your backyard talking with me right now. What
Let's
was that
go.
like growing up in the Boston area and getting into boxing?
Oh, I mean, man, I have nothing to compare Boston to because that's all I know. But it was amazing, Boston, especially back then. I was born in '85, so you're talking the '90s. A little, caught a little bit of the '80s in my consciousness, right? And Boston's definitely was a different place back then than it is now. As we know, it's changed a lot, but back then it was still very much blue collar neighborhood, right? I don't know if you could say the same about all of Boston now, although some of the neighborhoods have retained that. But yeah, Boston's just a very blue collar neighborhood, very diverse. I grew up in the projects in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and in West Cambridge actually, early part of my life, and then later moved to Waltham and went to high school in Waltham. But man, it's definitely no place like Boston, as you know, Travis.
So, with that in mind, you get into boxing, and I understood that, boxing for you is like a generational thing. Like it's in your blood, it's in your family. And then we talked the other day about the connection with Brockton, where, I started Oscar Mike Radio, and Brockton's kind of like still has that blue collar, fight or flight feel,
Mm.
mainly on fight with Rocky Marciano and Marvelous Marvin. You're carrying that tradition on with Fight Camp now. You compete at a high level. What's your boxing journey been like?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, when people ask me how I started boxing or why I started boxing, a lot of times I don't think we're super aware of why we're drawn to certain things, right? For me, the story of how I started boxing is a fun one where I had a cousin that used to get into a lot of fights. He's a little bit older, kind of a rough kid, and the school really didn't know what to do with him at some point. Like we have to find an outlet for this kid, and they sent him to a boxing gym. So, I remember going to the gym with him that day. We took the bus there, and I'm thinking I'm going to watch a fight, right? Because that's what happens at boxing gyms. And you get there, and it's the typical martial arts story where the real person that's there, it's actually Mr. Miyagi, and he tells you to go mop the floor or something. So I went to watch. He's like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, I came to watch." And he's like, "Yeah, you can grab a jump rope, or you can get out of my gym." you know. And it was not like a nice ask either. So that was the beginning of me starting boxing. I never left that gym, and however many years later, I was number two seed in the U.S. Olympic trials in 2012. So like, I guess like mechanically, that's how I started, but I'd always been interested in boxing because it does go back many generations in my family. As far as I know, it goes back to my great grandfather, but I think it's possible that it might have started even before then. My great grandfather moved to Boston in the 20s, and he became a professional fighter. He had several sons, and they all became professional fighters as well, including my grandfather. His name was Earl Duquette. He's a Golden Gloves champion and became a pro boxer as well. Yeah.
So, one of the things I kind of wanted to unpack a little bit because I do Olympic weightlifting, and the goal of that sport is to go to the Olympics and compete at a very high level. And so, you've competed at the national level. I kind of want you to articulate how different that is and say playing in college or, even professionally. It's a different animal, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It's the talent pool of the entire United States, which is, a country that's steeped in the history of boxing, right? It's part of our culture. I mean, the United States, the British like to claim the title of starting boxing, which they did, with the under the Marquess of Queensberry rules, which we use now. But, boxing goes back, it is really a Western civilization thing, right? The Romans and the Greeks all used to box. It was part of the Olympic Games, way back thousands of years ago. And it really grew to where it is today because it was nurtured in the United States of America. And I think that's because of how rough and tumble the US was in the 18 and 1900s, early 1900s. All the many different immigrant populations from whether it be Italy or Ireland or wherever else. Um, just literally that metaphor of fighting for survival, boxing became that outlet for a lot of people and how they either made their living or made an extra living on top of just making ends meet every week.
Well, it is a rough and tumble sport, and you did it at a high level for quite a good time, a bit of time. When you transitioned out of competing at that level, what led you to say, you know what, I want to take what I've learned and build something out of it, which became Fight Camp?
Yeah, I mean, at first I thought I was done with boxing, to be honest. I walked away from boxing. I was in college. I was very lucky or fortunate or, prepared, I guess, to get accepted into a private school in Boston called Babson College.
Yep.
And, I didn't go to school right after high school. I was just competing, trying to get as far as I could with boxing. And I was working. And one of the jobs that I had was I was a residential window cleaner. And I drive around the truck with this older guy who owned the company, and old school mentality. This guy didn't even graduate elementary school, right? But started this window cleaning business, and they were doing like, I don't know, over $1 million a year, which I thought was so cool at the time that this guy could not even he barely know how to read, but grew this business. And we used to drive around all these very rich neighborhoods, Wellesley and Weston and Lincoln, Massachusetts. All these areas are very wealthy. And I remember we'd be driving around Wellesley, Massachusetts, and whenever we drive by this one college, he'd say he called me Flash because I was really slow at window cleaning compared to him, right? Because I was new. So he's like, Flash, you see that place right there, Flash? Like that's where all the big shots go right there. If you want to be a big shot, that's where you go to school. So as I was boxing, I always knew that I'd go to college. It was always a goal of mine. It was just kind of deferred a little bit. So I'd gone to a community college and really applied myself. I wasn't a good high school student, kind of by design. I didn't want to be, a bit of a rebel. But when it was time to go to college, I'm like, oh, all right, this is it. This is the big show. This is where it matters. And I just looked at everybody else in the class and I took like a boxing mindset to it. And I'm like, I'm competing with all of these kids. They're all competing to get a higher grade than me, to stand out, to get transferred to the better school, to get the better job ultimately. So I'm gonna these kids up, right? And that's the mindset I took. And at that community college, I ended up with a 4.0 GPA. I aced every single class. And it wasn't like, oh, this is easy. It was like I really worked at it. I spent 12, 13, 14 hours a day sometimes just studying, reading, rereading, writing the things that I read. Um, Math especially was not something that came super easily to me. So when it was time for me to transfer, I was ranked in the US on the national team, potentially going to be Olympian, 4.0 at this junior college. And I probably could have went anywhere that I wanted to. I probably could have transferred to any school. But I only applied to one, and it was the big shot school, right? It was Babson College, that I'd done some research on. And yeah, I applied to it and got accepted. And an amazing experience. So at Babson, they have one major, and that is entrepreneurship. You go to Babson, you study entrepreneurship. That's it. You go to Babson, your first semester, you start a business. They give you like, I don't know, $1,000. They're like, go start a business, which everybody blows the money and fails, but that's the lesson, right?
And you start, that's it. Just following the fees is almost $1,000, especially in the Commonwealth here. But okay,
Right,
so they
right.
just put you right in the fire.
Oh, yeah. And everybody starts a t-shirt business. It's funny.
How'd that go for you?
Oh, not good. Good. Yeah. Yeah. Not good at all.
So you go through Babson, you come out of it. Did you have an idea going through college what you were going to do as you were going through it, or was it still just kind of an area of discovery for you?
Yeah, I'm a very like independently driven person where I kind of want to like take things by the reins myself, and I think that's why I was drawn to combat sports and boxing. It's a very individualized sport. Um, and I had always been interested in entrepreneurship and all the different entrepreneurs that were, you know, crushing it in that age. You watch these stories that became very prevalent, obviously, in the early 2000s with tech, and I was drawn to that. Um, and that was entrepreneurship was an interest of mine. But at Babson in my last semester, I got selected as a small group of students that got a chance to work with a venture capital fund. It was known as Highland Capital. And this was my first introduction to venture and like tech VC. And our overseer, the partner from the group that we worked with a little bit, his name was Bob Davis, and he started the company that I'm sure you remember called Lycos.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the first ever search engines, and he was just a an absolute boss, right? And he grew up in Dorchester, this guy, right?
Right
Irish
down.
guy. Yeah, Irish American guy grew up in Dorchester. So it's like this is my kind of guy. And I just thought he was the coolest dude ever, man. So that really drew me to tech entrepreneurship. I'm like, this seems like a really cool road to go down.
So tech takes all different flavors. I work in technology, and the Fight Camp platform is built on technology. So was it just a natural progression to say, you know what, I've done boxing at a high level for a long time. I enjoy the boxing mindset and combat sports. I can marry it with technology and make something.
Actually, the opposite. I
Okay.
thought boxing had no. I would have never thought technology and boxing mixed. I remember my friend George Foreman. He's George Foreman's son, George Foreman the third, right? He had me come out and see this new gym that he was building in Boston, and it was like one of the first like kind of like higher end boxing gyms. Oh, the boxing gyms I knew. I told you on a separate conversation. Like I used to go and spar at Petronelli's in Brockton, right? Or
That was Spartan.
yeah, or Capiello's
Yeah.
in Boston, right? But all the gyms are out Boston. These gyms are not the kind of place where some, guy that works in tech or a doctor or something would go and like hit the bag after work. No, they would stay far away from these places. So George had me go and visit this gym that he was building. It was like a little bit tech infused, but it was like really high end. And he's telling me like, this is gonna be big and we're going to sell this many memberships and maybe you could join us as a trainer or something like that. And I'm like, I'm giving him yeah, this looks really cool. And I remember leaving going, there's no way that's gonna work. So the first business that I started outside of college had nothing to do with boxing. It was computer vision. It was actually the concept was looking through social media photos and being able to recognize brands in the photos through a scan using computer vision. We had two people from MIT that were actually helping us. We raised a little bit of money, but ultimately that didn't work out like most startups. And at the time that we were shuttering that down and moving on, I had gotten into touch with my co-founders at Fight Camp, who were building the punch trackers, right? So Fight Camp was not even a thing. It didn't exist. Um, but these guys had handmade these sensors that would measure like the speed of a punch. And so I remember my co-founder Khalil came down to Boston to show me the tech, asked me if I'd, go on this journey with them to try to build this company, right? Because at the time it was a science project, right? So yeah, man, it kind of spoke to me because I lost in the Olympic trials by a very small margin. I lost on a tiebreaker. And I would always question like what I could have done differently because it's such a small margin, right?
Right,
Like
right.
I've done one thing differently. So the idea of being able to measure your training more effectively and then make adjustments based on measuring it in boxing, I'm like, this is perfect. Like I love this. So I joined with the team. This was late 2015, like fall of 2015. And, we had no money. We had no, it wasn't a business. Like I said, it was a science project, but we got accepted to a startup accelerator called Y Combinator with a much different business model. Our business model at the time was, can we put these trackers, onto athletes during live fights and maybe, measure the data and, use it on screen for HBO. They could use the speed of the punch and all that stuff. So we were pitching that. We had talked to HBO and Showtime and the UFC and all these guys. We're in talks with them. And yeah, that's what we were trying to do at the time. But the winter of 2016, January 1st, actually, it was December 31st, New Year's Eve, 2015. I got in a car, packed all my stuff in it, a really not reliable car, a really old car with holes in the bottom, and drove from Boston to San Francisco, to that area.
So you really had to bet. In a way, it's almost like the veteran experience where you get out of the military and you've got to bet on yourself on a new venture. There's parallels there. So this is very interesting. And
Travis, there's nothing more American than that, man. The greatest country in the world for that reason, because you can make stories like that happen.
well, you're living it. You're walking your talk. You're I gotta tell you, I mean, and we'll get into my unboxing experience here in a second, but I really like the whole thing on the wraps. It says, be your strongest combination. And, I'm not a boxer. I took, self-defense training in the Marine Corps. I messed around with Kimpo a little bit before that, but I'm primarily a weightlifter. We'll get into that part of the story, but it just kind of set the tone for what I was experiencing as I opened the platform and got it ready to go.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think it's one of those details where I remember approving it. I mean, like, that's cool. And I just forgot about it too. But that's boxing, right? It's all about individualism and self-determination. That's why I think boxing sprung out of the Western world. It's all about self-determination. Be your strongest combination. It's very direct for that reason. It's not like build a community of people that you can ask for help, which is not bad, but that you can ask for help that can help you. That's kind of like the Peloton vibe. I think their motto is like, together we go far. Great. You need community too. But boxing is like, pick yourself up and get this done. Punch through it. Be your strongest combination.
For sure. So I unboxed the platform. I'm gonna call it the platform if you don't mind. Do you prefer platform or kit?
No, that's
Okay.
perfect. Yeah.
And we're showing this on a Sunday. Saturday I had a little unboxing video going, and my first impression was like, okay, I thought, just be candid with you, that this is gonna be like a kind of like a guitar hero for boxing.
Mhm.
That was not this bag was like a real boxing bag. The gloves, I'm like, these are like real boxing gloves. And then I teched out. I'm in technology, and I'm like, I looked at the trackers. I'm like, okay, this is not like anything I played with before. The closest thing would be like the Xbox's Connect when it was still a thing. And I'm like, okay, they mount on my wrist, and it must sense when I hit the bag, like the speed, force, so on and so forth. So I'm like, okay, playing around with it. I set up the console, I get connected to my phone, I download the update, and then I get going. And that's where the real like nerd in me came out. And my son and his friend were like, Dad, the UI is really cool. So a lot of cool stuff, but the data is where I want to hit on first, because I look at my workout on my phone when I get done with it, and I'm like, there's every aspect of the workout recorded on my phone. And I can share it with somebody. I can review it myself. It will tell me what I'm doing. And there's a real attention to my performance for each workout to help me improve. So my first question about all this is like, was that intentional? Did you want that level of detail in the platform? Because again, I thought it was going to be more like a video game, but I'm like, no, there's real trained metrics here for the person who's using your platform.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we started. We started by providing these trackers for like actual real fighters, right? So they're actually capable of deeper, providing deeper data than we even provide with FightCam, right? Because we had fighters like Vasyl Lomachenko using them, different world champions in boxing and in mixed martial arts. And then when we made the shift to FightCam, it was very important to us, to me, myself, definitely coming from that boxing background, to make the training and the content authentic. And then the data just follows the training and the content, right? It's there to uplift that and add a layer of interactivity and competitiveness to that. But the authenticity was very important for sure. Because it's what I saw work really well in fitness gyms too. A lot of these boxing gyms, they double as fitness gyms. That's how they keep the lights on, is by teaching bag classes. Maybe 5% of these people will actually spar, and the other 95% just want to be in that atmosphere around fighters who are, sparring and fighting that they can go support. And they just do bag classes. And what I saw was keeping it authentic and not cookie cutter really worked the best and kept people in that atmosphere.
So I boot this up and I go through my first class. I put the wraps on, I put the gloves on, and I get to meet Coach PJ.
Mhm.
And I don't know much about boxing. I'm like, okay, he's not just showing up. He's not like a model doing this. He
Mhm.
seems to have actual like boxing experience. He was constantly reminding us about our form, how to drive the punch, turn your wrist into it. Again, was that intentional? Because you seem to have gotten people who really, one, buy into your system, and two, can articulate to a novice like me, what's needed here.
Yeah, no, I'm happy you asked that question because at the time we launched Fight Camp, there were a lot of these cookie cutter gyms that were popping up in different metropolitan areas where they have the fancy lights and everything else. And the trainers they would hire were people who didn't have a lot of boxing experience, right? Maybe they had a personality, which is great, and they were fitness instructors, but they'd, get maybe teach them a couple punches and then be like, go teach people. With Fight Camp, that was definitely an intentional decision. Every single trainer that we hire has to have had competitive combat sport experience in boxing or kickboxing. So every trainer that we have hired does. And that really shows through the product because they can really articulate the information to people in a way that somebody that doesn't have that experience definitely could not. Yeah.
No, I really like that. And then the console, I'm like, okay, this is different. You have the charging station for the trackers. I get that, but the console's its own entity. And I gotta tell you, I was totally in, Tommy, when
Mhm.
I said, you know what, I'm not really sure about this. Let's see what this is all about. I kind of like this. My aha moment, I'm not kidding you, was when the console turned red, white, and blue.
Let's go.
Right, let's go full throttle missile. I was a hawker. I fired missiles at aircraft. The missiles launch. I hear the song, boom. Let's go. Let's amp this up. I don't know why. I don't know how even, but it was a combination of, hey, I'm doing this workout, and like I'm telling you, I'm a weightlifter. I move hundreds of my workout loads in tons.
Yeah.
Those gloves are getting heavy. And PJ's like, stay in there. And the light kicked on. I'm like, I found another gear. And I'm like, how did the design for the console take place? Because it's the hardware, but also the software that runs it. And I love talking about software.
One thing I can tell you about Fight Camp is we're probably one of the only tech companies, definitely in connected fitness. I don't want to speak poorly about directly the others, but maybe they'd be ashamed to be in the country that they're in. Whereas us, you go in our studio over here behind me, and there's an American flag hanging on the wall, a
Love
massive,
it.
right? And we're just staying true to boxing. When you go into any boxing gym, you see the exact same thing, right? And you'll see other countries' flags as well because boxing is a very diverse sport, right? You have some of the best countries for boxing are, like Mexico, for example, the Pride, right? Or Cuba or the Eastern European countries are great. But you always see a huge American flag in every boxing gym, and that's why in that studio we put that up there.
No, it definitely made my day. And so I do the unboxing. I set it up. I get it connected to the platform, and I get going on this. And it gave me a sense of hope. And I'm just going to talk about myself here for a second. So 3.5 years ago, I ruptured my quadricep tendon, severed in two. It was my ortho believes it was an old Marine Corps injury that finally came due. And I wanted to keep competing in weightlifting. That's what I've done after the Marine Corps. I really like it. It's something that I put a lot of effort into. But I don't move the same way I used to. It's just the fact. We took a long time to get me back to where I could compete at a high level again. But I do the work. I do the PT. I do all the things my coaches told me to do. We go to the Howard Cohen American Masters and take bronze about a month and a half ago. Yeah, we're on the comeback trail. And, I talked to my VA PT about this. She's really happy about it. But we started asking ourselves, well, we exceeded all expectations. How do we get gold? And my coach is like, you've got to find a way to get yourself in better overall physical shape. Not that you're bad right now, but we got to get your work capacity back to where it was before you got hurt, and find a way to work within what you can do because you're older and you got some more miles on you. And then I get the fight camp platform. I'm like, well, this can't be happenstance. And I'm looking at the workouts and how they're designed, and there's a lot of similarities between, weightlifting and boxing. This a very individual sport, requires a lot of dedication, training, highly precise movements. And I'm like looking at the workouts. I'm like, if I do this and really buy into what this platform offers, I'm going to get that work capacity right. And so I'm setting this all up, and then I get connected with the fight camp community.
Mhm.
And I realize it's not just a bunch of people who are like, fanboys. These are people who are in different levels of their physical fitness or combat fight sports, right? And they're trying to get to the same place. I just made a post about, veterans, and I got an amazing response. And then I see your post about veterans, and people lit it up. Like, people in your community support each other. And how did that come about, Tommy?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you that it was a big master plan, but it's really just happened,
Good marketing?
Yeah, we have great people. Good marketing, I don't know. I just good people that we got. I think the product just attracts the right type of people. I think that's what it is. I was talking to you on a separate conversation about how much the veteran community, not just veterans, but first responders as well, have been attracted by the Fight Camp product. It surprised us so much. I think it's 30% of our base is either active duty, a veteran, or a first responder, right? And I think it speaks to the nature of the training, which, you've been through basic and I'm sure combat sports training in some form or another. Martial arts was a part of that, right? And maybe
Right.
ongoing PT as well. And then just aside from that, just the nature of those careers, those jobs, very unfortunately, what comes with it is very often symptoms of anxiety, maybe depression, maybe PTSD. And look, there's no silver bullet for these things. They're very difficult things to deal with. But, I'd venture to say there's no better form of exercise than martial arts training, hitting a bag. It's to help alleviate symptoms of this. It's so cathartic, right? You're sitting there and you're pounding on a bag over and over again. So I think that's why it has appealed to that community so much. Yeah.
Well, that led me to another couple of questions about the after effects of doing the fight camp program, because, learning about veterans advocacy and PTSD and anxiety and mental health in general, there's a real feeling that physical exercise must be a component to have good mental health. And so, what kind of feedback have you gotten from the community about using this platform to not only make them physically better, but also mentally more resilient or just more engaged as they embrace their own combination?
Yeah, and there's tons of published research that corroborates what you just said, just tons, right? And more coming out every single day. And it lines up with what we've heard, right? And I hesitate to like stand on the platform like we provided this for the people and we're the reason that they're feeling better because it's not, man. We just provided the tool for them to do it for themselves. And that's what it takes, right? It takes that being your own combination. It takes that like, picking yourself up and taking that first step. Now we'll take you the rest of the way. We're going to help you. We're going to show you exactly what to do. But if you're willing to tap in and, sacrifice a little bit, work hard a little bit and make it happen, then you are going to get good results, both physically and mentally, for sure. There's no better way to do it than boxing and kickboxing too, in my opinion.
No, I think for me, the fact that I can get my cardio and work capacity and physical capacity back to where it was with this right here in my home. Look, you've been in the Boston area. It was 14 degrees for the high at some points this week, Tommy.
Yeah.
Like not fun having to go for a walk or run outside right now. But I got home from work, strapped on the trackers, put the gloves on, and got my workout in. And I'm like, it was 25 minutes. I felt like I had done a 10-mile hump by the time I was done with it. But I'm like, if I'm feeling this way now and stick with this, how am I going to feel in a year? It's very exciting to kind of find a different part of myself, and I'm really interested to see how this relationship with the platform and with you all develops over time.
For sure. And stay in touch with me if I can help with anything along the way, man. It's such a pleasure to have you on the platform with us and as a member of that community. Another veteran in that community that I know is going to take, just the vibe of that whole community to another level. And for anybody listening that wants to check out that community, even before, you jump in, it's a purchase, right? It's a tough thing to consider sometimes. It's not cheap. Go on the Fight Camp community group on Facebook and just spend some time on there. Ask questions if you want, talk to people. You'd be so surprised at how supportive everybody is. It's amazing.
It really is. And one thing too is, you have a lot of women embracing this. I can't, I noticed right away that there's a lot of women who are very like dialed into their workouts. They'll tell you in very detailed posts how they're doing. And it's really cool to see how do, because some women are like, well, I don't know if I can hit the bag, and is it going to be hard to do? What's what's the feedback been like from women, using your platform?
Yeah, the response has been amazing. It's like 50-50 our member base, which I think for some people is counterintuitive, but coming from that boxing fitness world previously, especially kickboxing fitness is actually super heavily dominated by females, believe it or not. So, that's been extremely cool to see, of course. It's a very empowering workout for a woman to do. And then we've matched it on our end by getting some awesome, badass female trainers. So we have Jessica, who's a Muay Thai fighter. She's an amazing trainer. We have a girl named Charlotte, who's an Olympian in Taekwondo. And we have a girl named Selena, who was actually a world Muay Thai champion. She actually just won the WBC world title in Muay Thai. She's awesome too.
So in a way, you kind of had not the military experience. You didn't serve in the military, but you've had to go through your life as a high level boxer, get out of that and go to school, and then do something else and make all that work. It's kind of like what a lot of us veterans do. So I think that's why I'm like, okay, I'm understanding where you're coming from with this. And now you have this platform. You've got it out to a lot of people. And I got to ask, I'm sure you've been asked before. Mike Tyson. I saw this during the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. How did that happen? I got to know.
How did he lose, you mean?
Well, I don't want to. I have my opinions, Tommy. I don't know if you want to hear my opinions, but I I don't know. I don't want to say anything about that because I think that the victor was pretty obvious from the outset. That's just my opinion. That's all I want to say.
He's an older guy, man. It's
He's an
tough.
older guy hitting like a Mack truck, Tommy.
He is, but he's an older guy that, he's been through a lot. His back is in shambles, his knees, I don't know if you noticed his legs before the fight. They weren't as big as his muscle up here. And then I'm hearing that he has a lot of knee problems that prevented him from training legs. And, in the first round, he looked like somebody who used to really be able to do this well, but is almost 60. That's what he looked like. And then in the later rounds, he looked like somebody that's almost 60. He was tired. He didn't want to be there anymore. And I don't blame him. He's a legend. He's a hero. He's fighting like a 20-something-year-old kid that I think a lot of people still think of that kid, Jake Paul, as like um, like a clown or something. But no, this kid, he trains every single day for years. He spars with legitimate people. He trains with legitimate people. He's put a lot of time and money into it. I think he's somebody that, and he beats legitimate professional boxers. Do I think that he's like by any means like a top 10 world title contender? I don't, but he's taking more chances than like a young prospect in boxing normally would, to be honest. So, yeah, I don't. I think it's unfortunate. I hated watching it. It was sad for me. And part of me wishes it didn't happen, but the other part says Mike wanted to do it. And hopefully he made a lot of money. He challenged himself. He didn't get hurt. And, good for both of them. It was a great night for boxing. First ever fight on Netflix. They crashed Netflix, if you remember.
Right.
The undercard fights were amazing exposure for the fighters. Like obviously Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor, that fight was insane. The fight before that, Abel Ramos and Mario Barrios was a war. And that was awesome because I know Abel Ramos. We actually fought in the same weight class at the same time. He's a really good guy, Texas guy, Mexican American from Texas, awesome fighter. Really, or is he from, I'm sorry, Arizona, I believe he's from, and Mario Barrios is from Texas. But both awesome fighters. It was great exposure for them.
I just, not dating myself here, going back a little ways. I remember when, cable was first a thing and the big fight was on, and one guy would pay the money for the fight, and the other guys would bring over the beer and the food and the wings, and it was like a thing. Like people, came together, and where I grew up, black, white didn't matter. We all loved boxing, and seeing these athletes do this. So it was kind of like a throwback to the old days in a good way.
Yeah, man, definitely. And hopefully there's more of that to come.
Absolutely, absolutely. Closing this down,
Mm.
you've come through this journey in your life. You've established this platform that people can use. You have a very considerable user base. What do you see next for Fight Camp in the near and far future, Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, we're just gonna continue to do the best that we can for the members that we have, and hopefully we're blessed with, growth and all those things that come with it. But to be honest, it's already been a blessing. Like, spending time on that community that you talk about, when you see the way it's changed a lot of people's lives and stuff like that. A lot of people go through their whole careers and I don't know, they sell enterprise software or something, which is great. Everybody has to make a living, but they don't get to have that reward of having that kind of impact. And it's pretty awesome. It's hard to, I'm sorry, it's easy to forget sometimes because you're just going through the motion of going to work every day. But when you can like take a step back and like look at that, it's super rewarding.
Well, for me personally, I mean, I know you're supposed to separate myself from the story, but I really can't. I mean, this platform is going to be a component of what we're doing right now to compete this year in Louisville in December. And we're hoping for a good outcome, but I understand whether it's this weightlifting or boxing, you've got to put the work in, you've got to commit. So that started now, and I really hope for a really great outcome for my team, Fight Camp, and what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I'll say you have the right mindset towards it, and I'm sure a lot of that came from your time serving in the military. And I just want to say before we close out, thank you for your service, and thank you to all your listeners as well for your service.
hey Tommy, thank you and Jack for being great Americans. We're off to a really fast start here, and I hope for gold. Hope for gold.
You're gonna get it, Travis. Let's get it. Let's close it out with a fist bump. Let's go. Boom.
Boom, absolutely. Pouring that water out as I come over for that jab. Absolutely.
That's right.
Hey, again, one of the themes for Oscar Mike Radio in 2025 is the aspect that civilians take what they have and create things that, yeah, they're trying to build their careers, offer product or service, but they can use that to be there for veterans. And this is a platform tailor-made for my community, so partake of it. Tommy, I want to thank you for coming on and talking with me. As we say in Oscar Mike Radio, we're Oscar Mike, mission in flight. Thanks again.
But wait, there's more.
You don't got to record all this, man. I'm nobody special, bro.
Well, if I may, I was telling Tommy and Jack, I ruptured my quadricep tendon 3 years ago, and I've been on the comeback from that, and I'm a weightlifter.
Yeah.
And so I went to a big meet in last month and took bronze, and we sat down with my coaches and said, hey, if we're going to get gold, we got to get you back to where you were before you got hurt. We got to get your fitness and physical capacity like improved. Like you're good now, but we got to make you better. And I get this kit and I'm going through the workouts. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to be able to do this. So I'm hitting your workout. I cracked up when I heard Philly cheesesteak with ketchup, PJ.
Hey, listen, bro. Everybody has their own different, kind of swag on it. I'm born and raised with whiz, but it is what it is.
Hey, you're my first one to hit. I really enjoyed your time, and I'm dialed in for this. So thank you all very much.
That means the world to me, man. Go get gold, brother. We'll be cheering for you. All right.
Yes, sir. Take care. Thank you for listening and watching Oscar Mike Radio, where our active duty service members and veterans are in action, and the mission is in flight. Oscar Mike Radio is an oversized load co-Sinister One production. If you are a veteran or know a veteran who needs help, please dial 988 and press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line.